This is RT International coming to you live from Moscow. I'm Marina Joshi. Welcome to the program. Well, there's been a huge reaction from the press and public after David Cameron admitted he benefited from his father's offshore trust. The Prime Minister has just admitted he could have handled the revelations better and that there are lessons to be learned following what he branded a tough week. And now hundreds of people are rallying in London calling for his resignation.
Cameron! 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 Out! 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 Cameron! 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 Out! 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 Hey! David Cameron's got to go! Hey! Hey! Ho! Ho! David Cameron's got to go! Hey! Hey! Ho! Ho! David Cameron's got to go!
I know that I should have handled this better. I could have handled this better. I know there are lessons to learn, and I will learn them. And don't blame number 10 Downing Street or nameless advisors. Blame me.
RT's Laura Smith is in the thick of the protest and reports on an angry mood among the crowds.
We're right in the thick of this demonstration inspired by the hashtag #ResignCameron. You can hear they're all shouting, resign! 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 We're standing right in front of 10 Downing Street here, the police lines protecting Downing Street from this protest. A couple of people started up this call to resign and now the whole crowd has taken it up. It is largely peaceful, but there have been some breakaway groups, as often happens at these demonstrations, who have caused minor scuffles and been involved in trouble with the police. These people have all come out to make Cameron step down in response to revelations in the Panama Papers that David Cameron's father was involved in offshore funds and that Cameron himself had invested in them. Now, he maintains that he's done nothing wrong. He did admit that he had shares. He sold them before he became Prime Minister. He says he paid his full tax liability on those investments. But when I put it to these protesters that he had done nothing wrong, they disagree.
A lot of people feel that they have lost confidence in the government.
We're not accepting it when they're attacking the doctors, the nurses, the teachers. They've attacked the disabled and they've had to backtrack. They had a minister resign over that. And it's just, they're obviously very weak. They need to go. We don't trust them anymore.
That's a symptom of a much more important disease. The economic system is broken, and one of the reasons it's broken is it favours the huge tax avoiders.
Cameron's party is standing behind him. These people are calling him a hypocrite, particularly as he has always come out very strongly and said that he's clamping down on tax avoidance and tax exemption, and that these kinds of offshore funds are exactly the kind of thing that he would like to see eradicated. He's called it unacceptable that people would invest in these offshore funds. So this protest is still going on. These people are still very invested in what they've come here to do.
And with calls on Cameron to resign getting even louder, there was a huge reaction on social media. On Twitter, people are teaming up under the hashtag #ResignCameron, voicing criticism of the British leader. And here you can see how the hashtag has been trending across the globe. Well, let's now cross over to Guy Standing, who's a professor of development studies at the University of London. Thanks so much, Mr. Standing, for joining us here in RT. Well, there have been growing calls from protesters, as we heard earlier, and the opposition for Cameron to resign. So can he weather this storm? What do you think is next for him?
Well, I think you have to see this in terms of the geopolitics. And the Conservative Party behind David Cameron will do everything they can to keep supporting him, because this is a can of worms that if he were to fall on his sword, as it were, a lot of other questions about a lot of other politicians and prominent people in public life are going to come as well. And therefore, it's really, he's become the front line of a whole process. But clearly, he is caught in his own trap. He's caught in a trap of hypocrisy. He's been stridently opposing tax havens. He cannot possibly deny that his father had a huge stake in building tax avoiding schemes in the Panama, in various other places. He and his friends have been benefiting from that over the many years. And it's not just David Cameron. 72 heads of state, former or current heads of state, including your own and others as well, prominent people, have been caught with their pants down. And really, this is a sign of the complete corruption of the system that's been built up during globalization. So we're not facing a minor matter that really affects just one or two individuals. It's a systemic failing of a system, and it needs to be confronted, because we're seeing trillions of dollars being scurried away in various places. The super rich are enabled to take advantage of the system, and the ordinary man and the woman in Russia, in Britain, in every other country.
Certainly, it's people who bear the brunt of such kind of problems. But, you know, speaking of these revelations, at this point we know that 11 million documents were leaked in total, and only a tiny percentage has been sorted through so far. So do you think that there might be more damaging revelations still to come?
I think you're going to see a year of slowly seeping out of revelations of various people and institutions. It's going to unravel slowly. It's revealing a system that is fundamentally flawed. It is not something that has happened overnight. These revelations are going to bring in a lot of prominent names. We're seeing the exposure of a failed system, and it must be reformed as a matter of urgency. The trouble is that the people who could do the reforming are often among the primary beneficiaries of what's been taking place, and this is the biggest problem.
Well,
so
certainly, Mr. Standing, sorry for interrupting you just before you go, because we're running out of time. You know, earlier as we started with the protests that are taking place in London right now, people are obviously very unhappy with the situation there. But, you know, speaking of how the media covers what's going on, I mean, BBC World News employs more correspondents and reporters than any other channel on the planet, if we could say so. But we've been watching for 4 hours straight what's going on in London, and I can't seem to find, and we can't seem to find even a single BBC World News reporter in its own backyard to cover this major London rally on key revelations concerning the British Prime Minister's future. So why is that?
Well, don't try and embroil me in intermedia discourses. I think the BBC World Service, for example, I was listening this morning, have been covering this story every day this week. And I think they are trying to get to the root of it. Prominent newspapers like The Guardian in Britain have given full front page stories to the subject and long leader articles condemning David Cameron and various other people. I think it's up to the media, it's up to people like you who are responsibly following this story to continue holding on and not to lose interest and move on to some other subject as soon as the main facts start trickling out. It is something that is going to require sustained media coverage from everybody, you included, to make sure that the system is cleaned up. But at the moment, we're seeing just the beginnings of a very murky story.
Well, as you rightly mentioned, we do have a correspondent there on the ground in London covering the protest and getting our viewers updated on what's going on there. For now, though, Guy Standing, thanks so much for talking to us, Professor of Development Studies at the University of London.